Let's now move on to issue 2, the economy.
I wanted to walk you through the chart so you can see the full extent of the damage and destruction. And think about the workers at these places and how little they have. And hopefully they'll get help. If this is how big, well-funded restaurant chains are doing, imagine how the small businesses are holding up.
The economy is expected to enter at least a short-term coronavirus-induced recession. Millions of jobs are threatened as social distancing policies force restaurants and bars to close. And while the White House and Congress are preparing a $1 trillion bailout, some fear that action won't be enough.
How long can the nation tolerate this lockdown, and how can the economy recover? Eleanor.
As long as it takes. And you do see, as Susan pointed out, that the Congress is reacting. They've passed, probably by the time we air this, maybe 3 pieces of legislation. The third one is proving the stickiest because it's, who you bail out and by how much. And right. The Democrats want to make sure you bail out small business and really fix the safety net, and the Republicans are a little more worried about the big corporations like Boeing, Boeing and the airlines and all that. I think they're going to come
to you in 2 seconds.
If I could finish what I was saying,
sure.
they're going to come to an agreement because it's critical to save everyone. And those it looks like they're going to settle on checks, mailing checks. And they did that during the 2008-9 financial crisis. The legislation passed in February. The checks went out in May. We don't have that kind of time here.
The emphasis on Capitol Hill actually is for the small businesses, not for the airlines. The focus is on how to provide forgivable loans for these small businesses so they can stay afloat and pay employees and not go under completely during this time of like an economic slowdown. There's been a lot of debate about whether you want to even give money to the airlines, for example, who purchased the stock buybacks and put themselves in a bad financial situation ahead of this so that they didn't have the money saved for a rainy day. That's a huge debate on Capitol Hill. I'll tell you this, the focus from the Republicans is not on bailing out big industry. The focus Republicans are focused on right now is on the cash payments, which they've been touting even more than the Democrats, and small businesses. I'm telling you that's straight from Capitol Hill, where I've been spending my time.
Mitch McConnell is actually, his proposed plan for sending checks to people individually is more than what Kamala Harris has proposed. She's proposed $500 a month.
More than Trump proposed.
Yeah, more than Trump proposed. So I would just say that Republicans.
It's probably going to go up too.
I'd like to go to Clarence, but as part of your answer, let me ask you this. We're living in a unique historic moment where the Congress is going to have to be making choices about which industries to allow to survive, right, and perhaps which will not. How do you make that kind of a decision during this moment of national crisis? I mean, obviously the airlines are going to be more crucial than the vacation industry as it relates to large cruise ships and so forth. But how do you make those kinds of deciings, and where do you see that coming?
Mentioning that this is also an election year.
We'll be getting to that.
Yeah. Well, the fact is that there's not good relations between Wall Street and average Americans these days after the airline they'll bail out of the stock funds, and you've got the Senator Burr and other members of Capitol Hill and their what seems like insider trading, but certainly one more bit of rhetoric that Bernie Sanders has to love because it shows again that they're taking care of themselves in Washington and not you folks out there in the real America. And both Sanders and Trump have both campaigned on those same themes.
Well, there is an active debate about what industries to bail out, and I don't want the airlines to go under. I don't want Boeing to go under.
Right. And
Elizabeth Warren, the senator, has suggested that if you do give, nobody likes the word bailouts, so if you give loans, however you want to, guarantees, whatever you want to call it, you got to attach some strings. And Warren said, that they would have to pay the $15 an hour minimum wage, or that they had to make some commitments about climate control. So I think these are ongoing discussions on Capitol Hill.
Well, what's in the bill now are not things associated with worker pay or global warming, but rather making sure that any of the money does not go to executive bonuses or golden parachutes. They also have to pay it back.
Right. And Suraj, what do you believe is the most effective cash injections, a way to be able to try to keep this economy afloat? Because we're living in a historic moment now where we're literally shutting down the economy. And there's going to be some very difficult choices to make. If you were able to go to Capitol Hill in about an hour and wave your magic wand, what do you think would be the way to help this economy, which is going to be in very poor straits?
Man, it's tough to say what the right answer is. I think for younger people who are trying to sort of, build themselves at least a foundation, they were the ones who were impacted the most by the 2008 financial crisis. I certainly was, because I graduated in college in 2009. And the one place that many young people went to at that time was they went into school, got themselves further in debt. So one of the things that you obviously want to try to ensure is that you avoid that particular cycle repeating itself. And I think whatever cash injection you can give to younger people and to Americans as a whole, whether they be young families, whether they be the elderly, you have to make sure it's at least enough so that they're getting, say the federal interest rate on student loans or on credit card debt, you can at least provide some leniency on that.
I like the direct payments, but $1,000 or $2,000 one-time check is not going to go so far. So I think whatever Congress is doing now, it's going to come under the category of too little, too late. They're going to have to do more.
Well,
it's also a problem. We don't know how long we're going to need
that's right.
This kind of supply. Goes back to the issue of lack of testing, lack of information as to how long this crisis might last. But I just want to point out again that what was that survey that was taken a few years ago about if you needed $400 right now, could you get
nobody
it?
Had,
right?
A huge number of Americans didn't have $400 for an emergency.
Yeah.
A huge number
right.
just lives right on the brink of poverty every day, and those are the folks I feel most for. And we've had so much trickle down economics over the last 30 years. We need some bubble up.
Well, roughly 100 million Americans depend on tips to some degree for their income every month. Andrew Sorkin has floated an idea that there can be a loan provided through the Small Business Administration that can be forgivable in a 5-year term if the company retains at least 90% of its workforce over time. Susan, where do you see this going in terms of where do you think Congress will go next? We already had the legislation earlier this week that made some very important changes in terms of family leave, medical leave. Where do you see things headed within the next week or so?
I think that you're going to see more talk of a fourth bill. We're going to have 3. Including a big stimulus that's probably worth more than $1 trillion. There may be a 4th bill about helping states deal with unemployment claims. Don't forget, unemployment is a 2-tiered system. There's federal unemployment and then there's state unemployment.